Hello, everyone. This is Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guests and I play some movie roulette, randomly pick a film from my enormous watch list, and see our luck and check out a film, and we talk about it for all of you. And joining me for this episode is my buddy Corey, who's making a bit of a splash here on SPM Crew, popping up in some of our shows. So thank you, Corey, for joining me.
Always welcome, Shane. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. And we are talking about Under Capricorn. And you might say, I've never heard of that movie. And what's crazy is it's an Alfred Hitchcock film.
Right.
And it is based off of a play co-written by uh, John Colton and Margaret Linden, starring Joseph Cotton and Ingrid Bergman. So we got a couple of pretty big names here for the time. It was released September 8th, 1949. It was an hour and 17-minute film. Its budget was $3 million and only made about half of it at $1.5 million, based on a novel originally from Helen Simpson that was released in 1937. It is second Hitchcock film shot in Technicolor behind Rope. So up to this point, he was very much working in that black and white area. This features many 9 to 10 minute long takes, which I don't think I noticed while sitting and watching the movie, because to be honest, a lot of this movie is just sitting and talking.
Yeah, very much so.
Very much so. It is set in colonial Australia in the 19th century. And fun fact, this film was repossessed by the bank who financed it. Obviously,
Really?
because it didn't make the money back. So they had some problems. And this
Interesting.
is about a young gentleman goes to Australia where he is reunites with his now married childhood sweetheart, only to find out she has become an alcoholic and harbors a dark secret.
Hmm.
Something had to shake this up. This had to be something had to be like this is a Hitchcock film. But Corey, what are your general thoughts on Under Capricorn?
I think starting off with how you were saying the long shots. Yeah, I did. I didn't really feel those, but there are definitely. I mean, I say that, but then I also turn around and say, but then I personally, you notice it at certain points in the film. I really liked the like the panning or like the following shots, like up the
Yes.
staircase and back down. I thought that was really cool. That was a lot of fun. One big stand out for me was Wilding, excuse me.
Mhm.
I think just watching him like react to the other people and
Mhm.
his facial expressions and just the clips that he let out was a lot of fun. Really at the beginning of the film and kind of really helped set his character up. Um, I thought that was really well done. And there was one thing, and I wanted to actually, there was two things that I wanted to get your take on it. One, again, I really didn't look too much in this, but I didn't know if there was any deeper meaning to the title itself. I was like trying to like play around with what this could mean. I get that
Mhm.
it's like set in like Australia, so down under maybe, I don't know.
Mhm.
But I really did. I was curious on what your thought was, but then also what stood out to me is the damn shrunken head. Like, I'm not too sure how that played in or what they were trying to portray or get
Mhm.
across with that. And I was really curious what your thoughts were.
I'm trying to see if they had any specific, like I'm looking through like the trivia and stuff on
Yeah.
IMDb to see if they mention specifically uh what the title might be specifically referring to. But obviously, like I feel like most people in today's context think, astrology signs, I'm a
Exactly.
Capricorn, but they are based off of constellations too.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that specifically
I
has
see.
something to do with that idea.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because Australia is such a specific setting
Hmm.
in terms of like if you look at all the historical baggage, like Australia is very
True.
much a land of indigenous people.
Right.
And then England's like, this is really far away. Let's send our prisoners there.
Yeah, that would make a
Uh,
good jail.
and like most of this film is very much like white English American
Yeah.
people in it. And like it doesn't really bring in a whole lot of culture from
Yeah.
like indigenous aboriginal people. But like I'm wondering if like that's like a little thing for Hitchcock to bring in with like the shrunken head kind of thing.
True. Yeah.
And because this film is about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Generally, I was wondering, like, I had never heard of this. And like generally, like Hitchcock's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. After watching, I'm like kind of not surprised why this one kind of flies under the radar. Cause like I've watched a decent amount of Hitchcock films, and this is
Yeah.
definitely one of the least interesting and engaging of his. Which, like comparing a film to like Vertigo and
Right.
Psycho and so many other films, North by Northwest and Rope and Rebecca and Notorious, it's just like kind of unfair. But I do feel like this film, I think, at least has like Ingrid Bergman and Joseph
Right.
Cotton and like Michael Wilding, like you mentioned, who at least bring some presence to this film. And you need that because yes, a lot of this film is talking, and it's a lot of just human interactions, which that was the thing while I was watching this film, noticing that there are some inspired camera choices at
Hmm.
times. And that was like really the only moment I felt like, oh, this is Hitchcock film. Or like some of those moments with like the camera movements and stuff like that. Because for a director that was directing in like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, like he was pretty early on a dynamic and inventive filmmaker. So
Hmm.
like he at least had 2 decades of filmmaking or so under his belt at this point. So I'm not surprised he was able to bring some personality like that to this film. I do I could also see like this does have like the big kind of twist kind of
Yeah.
thing to it. And I feel like this movie really is only going to be remembered because of a twist. And which it's very unfortunate twist and what it means in terms of like the context of these characters and one particular character's sacrifice for
True.
another character, which obviously because like this movie is very much like a period romance with yes, there are some crimes going on here because these people wound up in Australia for a reason. Um, and it's it's a film that one I definitely felt the length at times.
Interesting. Because I
Like
didn't. That's so cool.
the and I don't know if it was just like high expectations
For sure.
maybe going in because like I mentioned, I've seen a lot of Hitchcock films and like this is definitely towards the bottom for me, but it is kind like I mentioned, it's unfair comparison because like if you
Right.
put this up against most other films from 1949, would this look like a bad comparison? But I guess what were some of the things that really stood out to you, Corey, about the film?
Outside, like I was saying, of the shots and Michael Wilding, I really liked Ingrid's call it a monologue. I thought that was really well
Mm,
done. She really brought in some emotion on that, and I really enjoyed watching that. I actually rewound and watched it again just so I picked up all the storytelling that she was given in that.
mm,
Um, Also, who else? Just I think, yeah, like you said, the characters, they were, I guess, the reason for the story. I mean, there was not too much to the actual plot. We
mm.
just get some in a roundabout way, some people in a room and they're just kind of talking and doing stuff that way. But I kind of going through, I think I was expecting from this. synopsis, honestly, I was kind of, it says, childhood sweetheart. So I'm like, oh, okay, so there's going to be a little bit more into that. We're going to be,
Yeah.
and I was like, did I miss something? Because I was not catching I was like, were they supposed to end up together at the end, or what was supposed to happen here? And I say that, but then towards the end of it, where Hattie and I'll say, Sam, they, presumably they're married, they've been married, and they stay married. And I was like, okay, that their relationship, their marriage felt real. Like there's obviously some
Mm.
rocky patches, and they're not always the kindest to one another, but at the end of the day, they do love each other. They're gonna make it work. And as you see, they kind of have each other's back
Mm.
with everything that's going down. Um, so I was like, okay, that's the true romance of this film, where I was expecting it to come from. Hattie and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but Charles.
Yep.
Yeah, those two. I was expecting it to come there. Another one performance that stood out to me was Millie. I can't remember who
Mm.
played her. You probably have it, but
Margaret Leighton.
yeah, I was that threw me through a loop. Just out of nowhere, just coming in. It felt, at least it felt out of nowhere, just right from the confrontation. If I have it right, with the gun and Charlie and everything there,
Mm.
just stepping in and kind of like, hey, I can swoop in here and take over Hattie's spot if you like. And he's like, hell no. Sam's like, hell no. So I really liked that. But yeah, like you said, I'm watching it and I'm just that shrunken head. It's still in my brain. I'm like, why
Mm.
the hell is this in here? Like, what is it trying to convey? And obviously, I mean, there's the I'm thinking like obviously because spoiler, right? Hattie is the one that does at the end do the killing, and Sam kind of covers it up for her and takes the blame, and that's why they get shipped off to Australia. But I'm like, is this just like some weird like um what's the word I want to use? Just she's oh my gosh, just it's like that looming entity that's like
Mm.
haunting her, her regret or things like that. I'm wondering if it's something that plays onto that because she's like freaking out that there's something in her bed, and lo and behold, it's this shrunken head that I guess Millie put in there because she's taking it out. So I thought that was an interesting choice to have this shrunken head. Um, on there. But I think that's a roundabout or some of the big highlights for me.
Yeah, I think the important thing is you do feel that looming. There's something looming here.
For sure.
And I think the payoff is worth it. Like by the time you get to the end and where you really start to like see what was really going on, uh revelations happen
Yeah.
where you're just like, oh, I feel like I think that's where Hitchcock really stands out in terms of being able to sell that.
Yeah.
And the I think the performances really work towards that as well. And because like there's few actors like Ingrid Bergman at the time that could really like draw you in to
Oh
a
yeah.
film for sure. And you know, Hitchcock loved his pretty women, um, pretty blonde women specifically. And you have this because it's a pretty sizable thing, and it brings a lot of looming guilt.
Yeah.
And I
That's the
think
word.
and I think that's important to understand with the story is that there's characters here with regrets and guilt that are hanging over them throughout
Hmm.
this whole entire film. And people do rash things, people do nervous things when they're feeling guilty.
Hmm.
And I think the presence of some of these characters with each other brings that kind of feeling back. And I feel like this film I think it takes a little while to really lean into this like darkness that's looming over it.
Right.
And I feel like that's where the film's strongest. And that makes sense because it's Hitchcock. And Hitchcock was certainly the master of suspense
Yeah.
and being able to ratchet up tension because that's what it is. It's better that we do know something is looming. We, the audience, knows, and it's interesting watching the characters catching up,
Yeah.
kind of thing. but yeah, I thought this was a solid Hitchcock effort.
Yeah,
Obviously he had like 60 something directorial efforts. So like they are all going to be Psycho and Vertigo and
exactly.
stuff like that. But like this is definitely one of those under the radar Hitchcock films that, especially if you're a big Hitchcock fan and really like that like darkness and suspense and that he brings to thing. This is a romance with some dark twists to it,
Hmm.
to say. And like it's interesting setting and stuff like that. And because Hitchcock, especially I think towards later years, was very happy to be sitting on sets and stuff like that. And I think it's interesting the placement of this. And this was still, I guess this is thinking about like context wise,
Hmm.
this is not, this is all before all of his like really really big famous films. So like this is like 2 years. This came out a year after Rope, 2 years before Strangers on a Train, 5 years before like Dial M for Murder in Your Window, and
Oh
then you
wow.
get into like the late 50s with Vertigo, North by Northwest, 1960 with Psycho. So this was still before that like big peak. It was
Yeah.
actually right before his big peak.
It's like he's just happy to get some work.
He's like right on the cusp there because like he was still a renowned filmmaker at this point because if not mistaken, 9 years before this with Rebecca, they won Best Picture.
Oh yeah, yeah. Forgot about
So like there was some attention that his films were getting, him notoriously never really being honored himself, which wild
yeah.
to think about. Like, no, Hitchcock never was the best director
It's crazy to
in any
say.
given year. I'm like, what? Kind of because like even this film, which didn't need to have it, still had some inspired directorial elements to
Oh
it,
yeah,
and
for sure.
you need that to shake things up, especially
Yeah.
when it's a film that it's basically just people talking, and then the subject matter gets a little bit more intense towards the end.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what you're in for with this. But I guess Corey, do you have any other last minute thoughts about Under Capricorn?
Just a funny one. Charlie having to eat those shitty eggs. Oh, excuse me. But they weren't even scrambled. She just cracked an egg on the plate.
Well, I guess she kind of tried. Kind of,
Kinda.
maybe.
She didn't want that cooking job, I guess.
No, I guess not. But that is a wrap on another episode of the Wasteland Watchlist. But Corey, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this underseen
Hmm.
Hitchcock flick.
Always always privilege.
There you go. And thank you all for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What's your like underappreciated Hitchcock favorite? Because people love Psycho and Vertigo and Birds and stuff like that. But are there any that kind of like fly under the radar for you? More people need to watch The Lady Vanishes because that movie is incredible. That's a very early masterpiece for Hitchcock. But also make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. We have a lot of great content here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network, whether it's about film, television, music, sports, physical media, comics, or, just talking about life with Luke. But, a lot of great shows, so please make sure to check them out. And if you like our logo, check out HiFlyer Creative for all of your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.